We took long family car trips when I was a kid. My brother, sister, and I sat in the cushy back seat, often fighting for practically the entire journey. Sibling rivalry took on a physical component in my growing up, and I'm not proud to admit that my twin sister Tracy and I fought pretty regularly. And this wasn't just a push here or there. This was real fighting. And I guess at times one might even have classified it as wrestling. My sister and I are very close. We've always been close, and it occurred to me that perhaps the intensity of our childhood quarrels is now directly reflected in the closeness of our relationship. After all, we do not fight with people in whom we have nothing invested. It is ultimately our expectations of others that most often leads us into conflict. In this week's Torah portion, we read of Jacob's wrestling with the angel. The context of this struggle is during Jacob's journey to reunite with his brother Esau after 20 years of separation. The history between the two brothers is problematic. Torah teaches that even as fetuses in their mother's womb, the two struggled as separate nations. We're told from that earliest point that they will know only strife between them and that the elder shall serve the younger. Never a good dynamic. It seems that this prescription comes into fruition in Genesis chapter 25 when Jacob, the younger, steals his brother's birthright and ultimately receives his father's blessing. After this episode, upon Esau's threat to kill Jacob following their father's death, Jacob flees and the two remain estranged for 20 years. Jacob is confronted with his family demons as he travels from Haran towards the land of Israel. The region of Edom where Esau dwells is located between Haran and Israel, and it is likely that Jacob fears encountering his brother and the potential retaliation and conflict that lies ahead in his journey. It is before the anticipated encounter with Esau that Jacob wrestles with this angel at night, presumably in his sleep. The famous biblical story of Jacob wrestling with the angel is the following. The struggle goes on all night long, and before dawn, the angel says to Jacob, "Let me go because day is breaking." Jacob refuses to let go until the angel blesses him. The angel changes Jacob's name to Israel, and then Jacob asks the angel his name. The angel refuses to tell Jacob his name and identifies himself only by telling Jacob that he has struggled with beings both divine and human. From this story, we are urged to ask, what does it mean to wrestle? It seems to me that our patriarch's struggle models our very existence. We too are strugglers like Jacob. The angel teaches us that we struggle with beings divine and human, and while it is not articulated as clearly, it seems to me from the placement of this story within the larger Genesis narrative that we also struggle with ourselves. Many years ago, a young boy climbed to the top of a snowman and raised his fist to the sky and yelled out, "If there is a God, then strike me down right now in this very place." The boy was searching for God. In his world system, God's presence was hidden, and he called out God to appear or do something to show God's self. The little boy was not struck down on that cold winter morning. While his style was maybe a bit extreme, that once little boy, now grown man, still searches for God. He asks questions like, how can an innocent child become sick and die if there is a God? How can bad things happen to good people? And we too pose these same challenges in our hearts and in our souls and in our tears when life's adversities crash upon our souls. How many times have we seen tragedy around us and looked to the heavens for some understanding, And while many sermons have attempted to deal with the problem of evil in a God-existent world, that is not my goal tonight. More valuable than discovering the reason behind what seems like madness to consistently engage in the struggle, I think, is the matter at hand. We too must discover what it is to wrestle with God. As liberal, progressive, Reformed Jews, many of us do this all the time. We fight to harmonize a critical, scientific, and systematic approach to the Bible with a belief in God and God's role in our life. Like Jacob struggled with the being both divine and human, we too struggle with others. From the time we're small children, we attempt to define ourselves within our family systems. Through interactions and competition with others, we develop into more differentiated beings, more and more into ourselves as separate from others. Our special talents and skills shine forth most often as a result of struggle with others. Consider the aspiring musician, those individuals who practice and perform successfully in recitals and competitions are affirmed in their developing abilities and are more likely to continue their craft when the accolade and applause of their family surrounds them. But in reality, most people who take piano lessons in their childhood do not continue into an adulthood. For the piano-playing students who feel less successful in their performances, they're more likely to abandon their efforts, which have not contributed to positive feelings and self-image, in favor of some other skill. If every student progressed according to the same timetable, students would have a less reliable gauge of their own skill level and overall talent. Because we are social beings constantly surrounded by others, performing tasks either identical or similar to others, we measure our value, our talent, against others, which ultimately generates a struggle between people. We figure out how we have to treat others and expect to be treated through a constant process of experimentation. We do compete with others, whether or not we recognize it as competition. Ultimately, we wrestle with ourselves on a very basic level. We struggle. Sometimes it's a struggle to get out of bed and be active participants in the world around us. I know this morning when the alarm clock went off, I definitely struggled with the part of myself that wanted so badly to turn it off and just turn over for a few more minutes. Our tradition captures this idea of self-struggle in the idea of the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov. These terms can be defined as the evil inclination and the good inclination that is innate to each and every one of us. The rabbis teach that these two forces are in constant struggle within us, and that the goal for living a life in accord with Torah is for the good inclination to edge out the evil. Not every time, just overall. Our sages recognize that even the most pious Jews struggle with these competing dynamics, and that this struggle has the ability to propel us to greatness. An example of this can be found in a room where a group of people are gossiping. We all know how easy it is to add a comment or an impression to the pile that keeps that fire burning. The rabbis would teach that it is our Yetzer Hara, that evil inclination fueled by a desire to be accepted and integrated into the gossiping group, that propels us to contribute to that process. In this same situation, have you ever noticed the dramatic shift that emerges when a person offers a positive comment or confronts the group on their actions? It feels awkward, uncomfortable in the room and creates that disconnection from what's going on. This is the good inclination at work, which has the power not only to transform the individual, but the group. Our patriarch wrestles with beings divine, human, and ultimately himself. At the end of that struggle, Jacob is transformed, and the change of his name is a symbolic manifestation of these internal changes. Engaging in struggles changes us. We are Yisrael. We are the people that struggle with God. Perhaps just as Jacob's name changes to Israel and he emerges into his glory, our wrestling prepares us to wear our name, Israel. Our tradition teaches that we are to be a light unto the nations. And when we wrestle with God, our people, and ultimately ourselves, we emerge into our greatest glory. Shabbat Shalom.